This is a Takagi Marco Ultra Series soot lamp, and sometimes the main spring needs to be replaced. Now these main springs are pretty tough, and most of the time the issues are the base needs refurbishing. And there are a couple videos out there showing the procedures on refurbishing all the base components. Usually, if those components are cleaned and re-greased, then it should solve your spring issues. But sometimes it doesn't, and the way you can tell is if your going down is much easier on your joystick than going up. If going down is easier and going up is harder, then it could be your main spring. So that's what we're going to do today. We've already refurbished everything in here, and now we're just going to tweak it by putting in a new spring. You need to take the tower assembly off and the arm to take some of the weight off of this lift arm. 2.5 millimeter Allen wrench. And your snap ring pliers. Now that we've gotten a lot of weight off of this lift arm, we're going to take these two caps off. And while we have this here, check, if you haven't already, to see is this screw tight that's holding on to your bearing assembly. If it's loose, then that could have been an issue. If there was some woggle, that could have been the issue. But what we want to do is, before we release any pressure, is go ahead and take this screw off. And what Marco does, they just have a screw with a flat washer, and it will be bent, it will become concave because of the pressure tightening on here. So and this often gets loose if I'm going up and down, because there's no lock washer on here. So what would be good is if you had a lock washer on your screw. So you could either use the same screw and put a lock washer on it, or this is a longer one that I'm going to use, and it's got a lock washer on it. When you tighten it, that's going to keep pressure from it getting loose again. That's usually an issue. Now, while this is all down, you want to observe how well your shaft on your bearing assembly is seating inside here. You want to see what it looks like. It's not going to be flush. It's just going to be a little bit lower than flush. And so when we put everything back together, it's important that you recognize what that looks like. So when you put it back together, you'll know, because there's a little key and a keyway on the shaft and on this lift arm on the bottom, on the casing. They need to match up and fit right in. And so look at that, observe it, and make sure that yours is the same way. Sometimes if this was loose, well, it may have gotten off, that key might have gotten off, and it needs to be corrected. There's another video out there on correcting a wobble issue that will explain that whole issue further. So we looked at it, everything looks good. Now we can release these. We'll lift up a little bit and remove these two Allen screws, 2.5 millimeter. If we've lifted up a little bit, we can push down on it to get our key out, our key washer. Sometimes these are really loose, and so you might have to, when you're putting them back together, squeeze these a little tighter so they fit a little tighter on here. But this one's good. It can move in and out easily, and it's not too loose. If you want to put a mark on there to show, okay, this side was up, you can do that. Pull that out. Now it's going to come up because we have released the bearing assembly underneath and this, so it's going to come on up. Now you might want to make sure if this is coming up, you might want to put your screw back in and tap it while you're coming up, because you don't want that bearing assembly to come out. It shouldn't, but if you just wanted to make sure, go ahead and knock it down so that it will fall and release. Now if you look under here, this is our little key that we have to be careful of, that has to go inside. That has to go inside this key. So they've got to match up. And that's why when we were looking at it previously, we wanted to see how far up this shaft was coming, because when we put it back down, we're going to want it to be that flush again, even with the spring on. If something was wrong and it had turned and it wasn't going down all the way, well then you will have to make sure that this key is cleaned up enough to go back inside this keyway and fit in. You might want to dry fit it before you put your spring back on to make sure it's going to go down. Okay, once you've removed your spring, if you wanted to measure your spring to see how bad it is, it's going to be, a new spring is around 37.5 centimeters or 14 3/4 inches, and you can measure yours to see how much it's off. It's a pretty strong spring, but if it's an old slit lamp and a lot of wear on it, it could collapse a few inches. And 2 inches does make a lot of difference on a spring. If this collar, this brass collar came off here, then you make sure to put it back on, and you want to put your spring on, and we have to make sure that we lubricate it with some grease. This is some Seal Glide, and make sure that your spring has grease on it. Marco uses a really strong, thick grease, and this will be sufficient. A light grease all the way around, all over the spring, the inside, everywhere, all around it. Make sure you do the entire spring. It's going to get messy, so it's best to wear gloves. And make sure you have this spring is well coated with grease before you put it back on. Wipe your hands off. Once we have our spring back in position, greased up, then we're going to put our lift arm back on, and being careful to make sure our spring goes in here, and our keyway is going to line back up with the keyway of the shaft. So you're going to put your hand in front of the spring so that you can stabilize it. And you're going to rub a little bit of grease off on your hand, but if you coated everything and put a lot of grease around here and on the inside, well, that's what's important. It should be okay. But make sure you start off going inside that little rim. And then we're going to push down with the spring, with the lift arm on the spring, and stabilize the front of the spring with the other hand. You can put your safety key washer back in to hold it. Okay. If you have it pushed down already, you can lower your joystick to hold it down. And now I'm going to insert this longer screw with a lock washer on it. Okay, snugging it down. I'm going to lift it up, and I can reposition this little keyway, and I might have to move the washer in and out to line up with those holes. So you may have to go a few times to line those holes up. And when it's lined up, you can put your screws back in. You could just lower it, drop your screws in once you have it lined up, and then slowly bring it up and start screwing your Allen screws back in. Okay, once you have those in, operate your joystick mechanism up and down. Make sure it's traveling okay. You might want to loosen everything just a little bit to let that bearing assembly seat like it should. If you like it, go ahead and tighten everything. Check it again. Now we put everything back in. Make sure your little washers are down on the bottom. They may be on the bottom of your arm, but you want to make sure you have those. And also don't lose the little pin inside, the locking pin. Sometimes they will fall out. Once you have everything on, check the movement with your joystick and see if you can notice the difference. It should be a little harder going down than up, because now you have a stronger spring, and it's okay. It'll slowly start leveling out. So if it's easier going up than going down, that means your spring is doing its job, because a brand new spring will be really strong. If everything is moving fine, you might want to check, make sure everything is tight. With your lock washer on there, that shouldn't come loose anymore. Make sure these are tight. And put your caps back on. So just a reminder, I think this is the number of the spring, and this is the length of a new spring. So you can compare your new spring with your old spring to see, or not. I just wanted to show you a quick diagram of the parts. Of course, we have our spring. And here are this is the lift arm. And there's a brass collar in here. Here's our bearing assembly. And here's our screw that we replaced. It's a 6mm screw, and I put one that was 18mm long. And that's what you want to trade out. You want to trade that washer out and put a lock washer there. These are your caps, and then this is the key that slips on the shaft below.